Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Deborah Garlick from Henpicked.net, Henpicked Menopause in the Workplace, and author of the book Menopause, the Change for the Better. And today's session is incredibly popular, and that says something. We've got over 1,400 people signed up to this session today on sleep. And I'm sure we're going to explore that from every avenue, because even before we opened up this session today, we all had a conversation about just how much sleep did we get and what sort of impact does it have. So I'm delighted to welcome back Dr. Clare Spencer from My Menopause Centre, who of course achieved outstanding on their Care and Quality Commission report. So congratulations to you, Clare.
Thank you.
And what I'm going to start with is that big question. Menopause and sleep. Does menopause cause sleep difficulties?
Yes, Deborah, thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you today. It absolutely does. And the figures vary according to surveys, but we know over 60% of women do struggle with sleep as they transition through the menopause. It's an incredibly common issue.
So what's actually going on? Why is menopause triggering sleep problems?
Yes, so there are many factors to this, and it's usually a combination of factors rather than just one, as I'm sure you'll be aware. So there's first of all the effect of low hormones on the brain. Anyway, the hormonal changes of the menopause can impact on sleep. But then when you factor in also the menopause symptoms, so we know 8 in 10 women approximately will experience vasomotor symptoms, so hot flushes, night sweats, and they obviously then significantly impact on sleep by themselves. Psychological symptoms, so anxiety, low mood. I'm sure we've all woken up and our brain is whirring in the middle of the night with everything that is going on. But physical symptoms as well. So if your bladder's a bit more irritable, having to get up and go during the night and then not being able to get back to sleep. And then there are a couple of conditions that medical sort of conditions that can worsen in the menopause for some women, like restless legs or involuntary leg movements, and also sleep apnea as well, where there's a relaxation of the muscles around the airway, which means sometimes there's a pause in breathing and snoring. So many, many factors that all interfere. And don't forget life, where we are in our life as well. There's often a lot going on, and that can be a factor also.
So that's a factor of how other menopause symptoms can affect our quality of sleep. But the thing I also find interesting is that your quality of sleep affects your symptoms. So you've got this sort of interacting, because to be fair, I know if I don't have a good night's sleep, everything feels worse. I can almost catastrophize. And when you say about the psychological symptoms, things that I could normally just ride and just go, oh, okay, I sort that. You just can't. You just sort of feel foggy and incapable, and then it chips away at your confidence. So it's both ways, isn't it? Symptoms affect sleep, sleep affects symptoms.
I completely agree. And that's why I really frequently talk about vicious cycles, because it doesn't matter what the symptom is, does it? Particularly cognitive symptoms, mood symptoms, anxiety, it all feels so much worse if you're foggy from lack of sleep as well. I completely agree.
And the thing that I find interesting too is when we talk about difficulty sleeping or sleep patterns, there's actually quite a range of what's included in that. It's not just that you can't get off to sleep, although that's a huge problem. And I'm fairly busted on that. My mind's working, my eyes won't shut. But it's more than just the not getting off to sleep as well, isn't it?
Yes, no, absolutely. So there's some women have issues going to sleep, as you've said, where you're lying in bed thinking, oh, I must go to sleep, and there's that block there. But also a really common issue is not staying asleep. So waking up in the middle of the night at that dreaded 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and then lying there thinking that you can't get back to sleep, which is almost as bad. Well, they're both as bad as each other, really, aren't they? And both of them debilitating. And for some women, it's both.
It's insomnia a menopause symptom then? Because, difficult sleeping is one thing, but insomnia, how is that different?
Yeah, so insomnia is a sort of blanket term that includes difficulty getting to sleep and difficulty staying asleep. And insomnia is when then, what is the term that is used when that then becomes an issue.
So I'm going to ask you the question now. Well, I'll ask you a question that, is this just something that happens during this transition? Is there an end to it? Is there an end to this?
Yes, no. Well, most menopause symptoms do get better with time. So if it's symptoms themselves impacting, as hot flushes get better, as anxiety starts to lift and settle, as your mood settles, and then sleep can then improve. Sleep can improve by itself. There is something about increasing age and sleep as well that can be an issue. So if you take menopause out of the equation, sleep issues can increase as we gain years. So yes, sleep can improve in the menopause transition, but for some people, men and women, sleep can worsen as our hormone cycles change, etc., as we gain years.
Yeah. Okay. So, if it's likely that it can possibly continue, what is it that we can actually do? What would help us? I'm looking for a miracle cure here. I know, Dr. Clare, but what can we do, or what can an individual do if this is a problem for them?
So there are many, many strategies, which is great. So there are different options. So practicing good sleep hygiene, if we start with the non-medical solutions, practicing really good sleep hygiene can be really helpful. And that's all about setting up a routine that gears you up for success in going to sleep. So we know looking at a screen late at night can impact on our sleep quality. And it's something to do with the light and our brain that tricks the brain into thinking it's still daylight and not time to go to sleep. So avoiding a screen for around an hour before you go to bed, having a really good sleep routine where you're doing something to relax, whatever that might be. For some women, it will be a bath, it might be reading a book, whatever. Making sure your bedroom is all geared up to sleep. So, it's dark, it's cool, it's comfortable, and also that you're associating your bedroom with sleep. So there is something called conditioning that we're increasingly understanding, that if you decondition your bedroom to sleep, that was particularly an issue in COVID when so many people were working in their bedrooms. You stop associating your bedroom with sleep. And a top tip on that would be, if you wake up in the night and you're lying there awake, don't lie there for more than around 20 minutes. It's better to get up, make a non-caffeinated drink, and then go back to bed and try again. So you're trying to keep your bedroom associated with sleep rather than lying in bed wide awake.
So you can actually train your brain to not sleep if you're not careful.
You can, but let's flip that on the head and say the positive is you can train your brain to sleep. There are the simple things. So many women I talk to say that they're drinking themselves to sleep, that they're having alcohol, they're having a glass of wine to get themselves off to sleep. But although that might get you to sleep, it doesn't keep you asleep. And then that causes a big up and down of blood sugar. That has an impact. And we all know alcohol is awful for making anxiety worse and mood lower. So if you can avoid alcohol, obviously do. And caffeine also. So avoiding caffeine after lunchtime is really important, because caffeine can linger for a long time in your blood. And so that can also negatively impact.
And that conditioning, I think, is important, because sometimes people will say to me, oh, I'll just flick through Facebook a bit, or I might had an individual that says, I might watch a bit of a film. And it's like, well, if you're doing that in bed when you're supposed to be asleep, or TV's in the room, I don't have a TV in my room for that reason, because for me, the bedroom is associated with sleep or sex, exactly. But nothing else. So there's some good tips there, and I'm sure we can link to some of the hygiene. Is there anything From a medical point of view, if you get to the stage, and that we had one pre-submitted question, I won't do the question now because my wonderful colleague Sally will come in and talk about the questions, but it was the bottom, it was the sentence at the end of this question that said, I will try anything. And I thought that is somebody that is really, really at the point of, if I don't get any sleep, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yes, I mean, if this is menopause related, if these are sleep issues in the menopause, then there is evidence that HRT can be helpful, particularly if you have the type of HRT that contains micronized progesterone or eutrogestin, because we know that eutrogestin can get you into a deeper state of sleep. So if there are, particularly if there are other menopause symptoms as well, then HRT can be helpful. If you are really desperate, obviously speaking to your GP and getting a very, very short course of sleeping tablets, just to sometimes take one and break the cycle. But we don't advise you take those for any length of time because they can it's very easy to become addicted to them. But actually, the intervention with the best evidence around it is probably cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So if you look at the studies, although everybody thinks of sleeping tablets, CBTI is, as it's called, can be very helpful. And there are lots of apps out there that I'm sure we'll link to. I know we've got some information on our website. You've got some on yours, Deborah, of good apps to try. And that's really rethinking how you think about sleep. It gets you out of that. It teaches you techniques to get you out of that cycle of lying in bed thinking, oh no, I'm in bed, but I'm not going to be able to sleep. It will teach you to break those vicious cycles. So that's very helpful.
That is very helpful. Are there any in particular apps that you would recommend?
So the two that spring to mind are Sleep Station and the Sleepio app. But there are many, many others. Sometimes they're available through the NHS in some regions.
Yeah, and I know we do have resources on CBT, and there's a lot of resources that are free around CBT that you can do individually or through a friend or with friends.
Yeah, so, the Women's Health Concern have good free information. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, that's one that perhaps support groups could all sort of check in and say, can we all have a look at this? That might be something that's worth doing as a group as well. Moving back to HRT, and you mentioned progesterone, and I'm conscious I have the one that you mentioned, the micronized progesterone, and generally I do sleep well. So I don't know what it'd be like without that, but I do sleep well. It's just the odd patch now and then. But I'm conscious that progesterone is to balance off the estrogen. So for those that have perhaps not had a surgical menopause, if you've still got your womb, if you want to use the words of the NHS, can you still get progesterone?
If you've still got your womb, so you haven't had a hysterectomy, so yes, so you would need both the estrogen and the progesterone. There is a shortage at the moment. I wonder if that's what you're touching on. There is a shortage with progesterone, the eutrogestin capsules at the moment, and pharmacies are limiting them to limiting everybody to 2 months supply at a time. But so if you have your womb, you definitely need the progesterone. If you've had a hysterectomy, then it's a discussion to be had. Some women are increasingly asking for progesterone, even if they don't need it, because they've read about the benefits of the micronized progesterone, particularly for sleep. I think you just have to be aware that there is a small increased risk of breast cancer with that combined estrogen and progesterone type of HRT compared with the estrogen only HRT that you would usually only need if you'd had a hysterectomy.
Thank you for
answer your question. Yeah.
It does. Thank you for clarifying that. I was just thinking if somebody's had a surgical menopause and they're thinking, well, actually, I'm not offered progesterone. Is there a consider it? But as always, what you're saying is, yes, it's possible, but it's a balance of your risk and benefits.
Yes, there may be other interventions that you might want to look at first, which don't have any risks at all, like cognitive behavioral therapy, like exercise even. You know, there's very good evidence that exercise can help sleep quality and quantity. So yes.
Yes, and I'm just going to summarise one of the things that you said there in the sort of avoid, it would be better if you didn't do this, and that was alcohol. Can be a bit of a problem. Caffeine.
Yeah.
You didn't mention chocolate, so I'm not gonna go down that. But yeah, it does come down to that, being aware of those sorts of things. We're all adults. We can make up our own mind whether we want to do those sorts of things, but may not be a good idea if you're struggling with sleep issues. I'm going to ask my colleague Sally to join us, because I can see that there are lots of questions in there, Sally. So welcome, Sally Leech.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there are lots of questions, and also, as always in these sessions, so much lovely sharing, people sharing hints and tips of things that they've found have been really helpful and really worked. So we'll start working our way through the questions. There's some key themes coming through. The progesterone one was a key question that was coming through. But one person in particular is asking, what can someone do? They're having HRT where they have a break for 2 weeks in progesterone and their sleep is really bad during that time. Any hints and tips?
Yeah, that is difficult, because it is, if you are in the perimenopause, to avoid lots of erratic bleeding, it is better to have the progesterone for the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off regime. Sometimes if people are really desperate, you can try taking it continuously off license, but don't do that without speaking to your doctor, obviously. I think it's really looking at what's going on in those 2 weeks and just optimizing everything. I know it's really hard work, and it's really hard. Sometimes even I end up telling women that we know that the first 4 hours of sleep are the best 4 hours. That's where you get your restorative sleep. And so I'm not saying you have to only manage on 4 hours, but sometimes women feel a bit better, or there's a relief if you just say, look, if you've had the 4 hours, your body's done its repairing, etc. So can you then get through? And that sometimes takes the pressure off. And that can, just that little snippet of knowledge can be helpful. Yeah, but I'm really sorry. That is difficult. Just look at everything that we've spoken about and just see if you can get everything lined up and just get things a bit better.
Fantastic. Thank you. Then the next one was around somebody waking up at the same time every night. And what might be going on there as to why that's happening and what they could maybe do about that.
Yes, so sometimes it's absolutely, it happens to me as well. At 4 a.m. on the dot, it's happening. So that is difficult. Sometimes looking at diets can be helpful, because sometimes sugar swings in the night. So making sure that you're avoiding fast release carbohydrates in the night can be, before you go to bed, can be helpful. Again, looking at caffeine, looking at alcohol, looking at your routine, looking at tweaking what's happening before you go to bed, and just thinking, what is it that is waking me up? Can you pinpoint, is it the light coming through your curtains because it's dawn? In my case, your neighbour's got a cockerel, or is it a hot flush that's waking you up? So I would have a good think about what's happening. And then I would see if it is menopause related, can you tweak your HRT? Can you tweak your diet? It is unlikely to be just one solution that will get there.
Brilliant, thank you. And another person saying they're going to bed and they feel exhausted, but they feel really kind of tired and wired, where the brain's kind of going crazy, but they feel just exhausted. So kind of best approaches for managing if that's what someone's struggling with.
Yeah, so I saw a really useful comment that somebody had written about how helpful meditation is. So I think if you're going to bed and your brain is whirring, it's working out the best thing for you that will stop the whirring and just switch it off. So as I said, it might be a bath with some lavender. It might be reading to distract your mind. It might be listening to an audio book, which I've discovered if you turn your AirPods down low enough, your other half maybe won't hear. There are some really good sort of meditation apps now, where again, it's very individual, but just listening to something relaxing and again taking your brain out of its worryingness can be helpful also. And again, just make sure you've got your HRT right, because if it's anxiety that's making your brain swizzle around at 90 miles an hour, it may be that you need to just change your HRT also.
Yeah, okay. And we've got quite a lot of questions around magnesium. People are saying magnesium helping with restless legs or helping with sleep. And so people are then saying, well, what kind of magnesium would potentially be supportive of sleep?
Yeah, so remember, I'm coming at this from an evidence-based doctor point of view, and we can't prescribe magnesium. So there are many magnesium supplements out there, but actually the evidence is that they're not particularly helpful. So it's brilliant that some women are finding them that helpful and that they're working. It may be a little bit of a placebo effect. It may be an effect on the magnesium, and the right studies haven't been done yet to prove it. But there isn't one dose, there isn't one right brand or form of it that we know to be helpful. In terms of restless legs, actually that's linked with lower iron levels. Yes, and so taking iron can be helpful with restless legs rather than magnesium. So that's my medical evidence-based approach, but plenty of my patients tell me that magnesium's helping them.
Yeah, I think people have shared about things like Epsom salt baths and things like that. And I think, again, that whole routine of having a bath before you go to bed and all of those things. But someone had mentioned their iron, when their iron levels are low, their restless legs were worse. So, so that's really interesting. So one of the questions we had submitted beforehand was somebody's got high blood pressure, which is menopause related, relating to not having enough sleep. They're only sleeping for about 4 hours a night. And they've tried things like lavender and things. And this is the one that said, I will try anything. So in terms of kind of first steps, what would you say would be the best first thing for that individual to start with?
So after we've gone through the whole sleep hygiene, making sure exercise, making sure lifestyle are all optimized, I'm wondering if the high blood pressure means that somebody hasn't started her on HRT. Because so blood pressure, high blood pressure by itself isn't a total contraindication to taking HRT. You can take HRT if you have high blood pressure. It just needs to be controlled. If you have the estrogen through the skin, so patch, gel, spray with a progestogen, then that will not impact on your blood pressure at all. It might even marginally reduce it. So if the question was related to high blood pressure, therefore can't have HRT, I would actually maybe find a different doctor, speak to a menopause specialist, because you might actually be able to have HRT and that may help your sleep. Okay. Only 4 hours sleep is awful, and I really feel for you. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. And the thing is, you say, when you see that, I will try anything. I think we all know when you're not sleeping, it's just everything feels really hard. Absolutely. Someone said they've been going through menopause symptoms for 10 years, and some have reduced, but they're still having disturbed sleep, so things like lack of confidence, bloating, swollen feet. So there's still quite a few symptoms, and just wondering how long it takes for them to at least reduce in severity. And I know that's a difficult question to answer.
We just don't know. So on average, menopause symptoms will last about 8 years, but around for 15%, of women, they'll go on for 15 years or longer. So I think that's why it's a good time, maybe then, if that's where you're at right now, to sort of sit back, take stock, and think about all the different aspects of life that we've spoken about, to see if there are little tweaks that you can make in terms of lifestyle, in terms of meditation or CBT, whatever, to try and improve that sleep and get it better quality. Yeah. Brilliant.
And people have asked for your views on melatonin tablets.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So melatonin doesn't make you, it doesn't make you go to sleep, but it can keep you asleep. The best evidence for them, and they're used mainly in avoidance of jet lag. They're quite difficult to prescribe and get on the NHS. There are really specific indications. It's unlikely to be harmful. Obviously, there is side effects, and you can buy them over the counter in, say, for example, America. You can buy them online, but you just need to watch the quality and make sure that what's in them, if you buy things online, it doesn't necessarily mean the quality is there or that they're safe. So my view is they have a place, particularly for women who are really struggling with sleep and can't take HRT. But they are tricky to get hold of through the NHS. GPs, we're usually a bit nervous about prescribing them because there are quite set criteria in which we can prescribe them.
Yeah, fantastic. And someone's asked about, have you got any recommendations for any online CBT resources to try around sleep?
Yeah, so the Sleepio app and the Sleep Station are really good. But if you Google CBTI, there are some really good books. So I've been reading Colin Espy's book, which is just one of many. Colin Espy did a lot of work around sleep and CBT.
Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. Final couple then is how quickly should, if you were choosing to take HRT, how quickly should that be having an impact on sleep?
So any dose of HRT can take up to 3 months really to settle, and it really can for some women take 3 months. And if it's just slowly taking the edge off that anxiety and just slowly getting your body back into the habit of sleeping through, it can take a while. It's not usually a quick overnight fix.
Okay. And someone said if they do wake up in the night and they can't go back to sleep, they've kind of been told actually getting up and doing something can be good. Again, how would you suggest, is that the right advice, or should we be trying to force ourselves back to what should we be trying to do?
Yeah, so not lying there awake for more than 20 minutes, because that's when you then start to decondition your brain to your room and sleep. So it's better to get up, do something gentle, don't turn all the lights on, but don't trip up in the dark, obviously. Having a herbal tea or having a hot drink, and then try going back to sleep. So don't do something that's really stimulating to your brain, but doing something relaxing and then go back to bed. And this is where the CBT can be quite helpful for teaching you techniques of then going back to sleep and just going through a relaxation strategy, for example, working down your body. I once read quite a useful piece of advice that was given to American soldiers in war zones and how to sleep. I don't know if you've come across this. And it was all about going back to bed and relaxing, doing a meditation. And that was found to be helpful in war zones. So yes, have a Google, it's quite useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been so much amazing sharing that people have been around, things that they found helpful, apps they found useful, all sorts of things that pucker night tea came up as relaxing and peace teas, very much things that people are finding really helpful. So just a huge thank you to everyone for sharing.
Yes, thank you. And I think you're right in terms of the hygiene. Mine is, I have which took me back to childhood when I started it, but clearly my parents knew what they were doing, is a warm glass of hot chocolate before I go to bed. It's lovely. And my wonderful friends at work bought me a velvetizer, which makes it even more luxurious. And it's not hot milk, it's hot chocolate. It's just warm enough. It just soothes me. So a little bit of TV that's not going to challenge me very much before I have it, and then that usually helps a lot. And that there's no sort of prescribing or anything else in that. It just works. The good old Horlicks or hot chocolate can make quite a big difference, can't it?
Exactly. So that lovely routine of relaxing, switching off, having a warm, soothing drink, and then going to bed is obviously working really well for you, Deborah. That's good.
It is. And thank you very much, Sally Leech, and to everyone for all of your questions. And I'm sure we're going to do a session on progesterone for anybody that had progesterone specific questions. And thank you very much, Dr. Clare, for joining us today and sharing your top tips on how we can all get a good night's sleep. So I suppose we say to everybody, we do wish you a good night's sleep, and hopefully some of the tips do help you in the future. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for having me.